Nobody laughed when Carlin walked into the conference room on the 41st floor of the Harbour Crest Tower. They didn't need to. The silence did it for them. She was wearing a second-hand blazer 2 sizes too large, carrying a canvas tote stamped with the logo of a credit union that had collapsed 3 years ago. Her hair was pulled into a knot with a rubber band, the kind that came wrapped around grocery store broccoli. The 4 men around the table, all of them in suits that cost more than her monthly rent, stopped talking the moment she stepped through the glass door. The man at the far end didn't look up at all. He was reading something. He had a name that the Port District knew and didn't say aloud. Renner. Elias Renner. 42 years old, grey at the temples, a jaw like poured concrete. He ran the Renner Group, import logistics, private security contracts, and roughly a dozen other things that didn't appear on any filing with the CRA. His previous financial controller had gone missing 11 days ago. The word on the street was that the man had walked into the wrong conversation. The one to Renner's left, wide, red-faced, a decade of bad temper visible in how he held his shoulders, pushed back his chair. His name was Orso. Carlin already knew that. She'd spent the bus ride over memorizing the org chart the agency had slid across the table. "You're the bookkeeper," not a question. A verdict. "Accountant," Carlin said. She set her canvas bag on the mahogany table and pulled out a manila folder. "Bookkeepers record what happened. I figure out why it happened and who it's going to happen to next." Orso looked at Renner. Renner didn't react. "Luce sent you," Orso said. Luce ran a placement agency out of a walk-up on Commercial Drive. Hospitality placements, clerical work, and, roughly once a year, something considerably less above board. Carlin had done 2 of those less above-board jobs in the past 3 years. She was still here, which was its own kind of reference letter. "She said you had a vacancy," Carlin said. "A vacancy that used to be a man named Briggs, who is no longer available. I know he had 3 offshore accounts the Renner Group didn't know about. I know at least one of those accounts received deposits from a numbered company registered in the Caymans that also does business with Harbour Pacific Freight, your main competitor for the Tsavasan container terminal contract. I know he's been gone 11 days and you still haven't closed the leak, which means whoever pointed him in that direction is still on this floor. And I know you didn't call a recruiting firm. You called Luce, which means you need someone who won't ask questions about the parts of your operation that don't issue T4s. The room held its breath. Renner turned a page. "She doesn't know what she's walking into," Orso said, his voice dropping. "I grew up on the east side of Abbotsford," Carlin said. "I've been walking into things I shouldn't since I was 12. I'm still walking." She looked at Orso steadily. "Are we finished, or do you want to keep explaining what I don't understand?" Orso pushed to his feet. He was a big man, the kind of big that was supposed to make a point. Carlin didn't step back. "Give her Briggs' desk," Renner said. He still hadn't looked up from the page. Briggs's desk was in a glass-walled office on the east side of the 39th floor, with a view of the inlet and the mountains behind it, and a filing system that looked like it had been organized by someone having a quiet breakdown. 3 monitors, a shredder that had been run recently and often going by the confetti in the bin, a locked drawer that someone had already forced open and emptied. Carlin sat down in Briggs's chair and started from the beginning. She was 29 years old. She had a diploma from a community college in the Fraser Valley, a CPA designation she'd taken 3 attempts to pass, and a particular talent for finding the things that weren't supposed to be found. It wasn't intuition. She didn't believe in intuition. It was pattern recognition, a holdover from growing up in a house where the difference between a good month and a bad month was who her mother had been talking to and what the utility bills said, and she'd learned early to read both. Numbers, she had always understood, were the only honest things in a dishonest world. People lied constantly. Numbers only lied when someone worked very hard to make them. She pulled up the consolidated accounts and started reading. By noon she'd found 2 irregularities. By 3 in the afternoon she'd found 7. By the time the cleaning crew came through at 9, she had built a map on a yellow legal pad, boxes and arrows and circled figures, that told a very clear story about where money had been flowing for the past 14 months, and who had been making sure no one looked too closely at where it went. Renner was still in the building. She could tell by the light under his office door at the end of the hall. She knocked. "Come in," he said. He was standing at the window with his jacket off, his sleeves rolled to the elbow. His forearms had the kind of scars that didn't come from kitchens or construction sites. He was holding a glass of something dark and not drinking it. Carlin walked in and put the legal pad on his desk. "You have 14 months of slow bleed," she said. "Whoever set it up was careful. It's spread across 6 subsidiaries, always under the reporting threshold, always in a quarter where there was enough legitimate variance to hide it. Briggs was either doing it himself or being paid to look away, probably the second one. The pattern is too clean to be the work of someone who also had to maintain the regular accounts." Renner looked at the legal pad without picking it up. "You found this in one day," he said. "The trail is there. It's just tedious to follow. Most people aren't willing to be bored for long enough." She paused. "Someone is building a position. The money isn't being taken out. It's being parked. Short-term accounts that will liquidate when someone gives the instruction. Whoever is behind this isn't skimming. They're staging." "Staging for what?" "A hostile restructuring," Carlin said. "They don't want your money. They want the terminal contract. Once you're financially compromised enough, someone walks in with an acquisition offer at half the company's real value, and the banks back them, because they've been quietly fed a story about liquidity problems. It's a corporate demolition. Slow, clean, and almost impossible to prove once it's done." Renner finally looked at her. His eyes were a flat, pale grey, the colour of rain on glass. "Who did you work for before Luce placed you?" he said. "People who needed things found," Carlin said. "I don't have a long story." "Everyone has a long story." "Most people's stories are excuses," she said. "I don't find those useful. What I find useful is the name of the account that's been receiving the staged funds for the past 7 months. Do you want it?" A pause. "Yes," Renner said. She told him. His expression didn't change, but the hand that was holding the glass went very still. "That account is controlled by someone inside this building," he said. "I know," Carlin said. He set the glass down. He looked at the legal pad for a long time. "You understand what you've walked into," he said. It wasn't a question. "I walked in this morning and I'm still here," she said. "I'll be here tomorrow." She was there for 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, she learned the rhythm of the Renner group, the way she learned any new set of books, by finding the places where it didn't add up. The lunch orders also charged to petty cash. The way the security log had gaps on Tuesday afternoons. The personal calls placed on the company's second line that never appeared in the billing summary because someone had quietly modified the reporting parameters 18 months ago. Renner didn't invite her into his world. He didn't explain what the Renner group actually was, beyond what she'd already worked out, and she didn't ask. She sat at Briggs's desk and she followed the numbers, and every 3 days she left a summary on Renner's desk in the morning, and it was gone by the time she arrived. He never commented on the summaries, but the Tuesday afternoon security gaps stopped appearing after the second week. Someone quietly reassigned 2 of the accounts she'd flagged to a third-party audit firm. She noticed these things the way she noticed everything, without saying so. What she also noticed, Renner ran his operation the way someone ran a wound that hadn't healed right. Too controlled, too careful. The other men around him were always performing something. Loyalty, competence, muscle. Renner never performed anything. He just calculated. She understood that. She'd been calculating since she was old enough to count. On the Thursday of the 3rd week, Orso stopped by her doorway. "The boss wants to know if you're comfortable," he said. He said it the way someone says something they've been told to say and resent saying. Tell him the ventilation on this side of the floor is undersized for the server load, Carlin said, without looking up from her screen. It's running 3 degrees over spec. The hardware warranty is going to void itself in the next 18 months. Orso stared at her. That wasn't the kind of comfortable he meant, he said. I know, she said. Tell him anyway. Orso left, muttering something in the hallway. 2 hours later, a facilities tech came up to look at the ventilation system. She filed that away. The night it went wrong was a Tuesday. Carlin was working late. She preferred the building in the evenings, when the foot traffic dropped and the numbers were easier to hear, which was a strange way to think about it, but that was how it felt. She was cross-referencing a discrepancy in the terminal billing reports when the discrete alarm tripped, not the building alarm. The one hardwired into Renner's private office, the one that didn't ring anywhere else. She knew about it because it appeared as a line item in the maintenance contract she'd audited her first week. She saved her work and stood up. The hallway was quiet. The cleaning crew had already left. Renner's office door was open. That was wrong. He never left it open. She crossed the hallway and stepped inside. The room had been gone through, not ransacked, methodically searched. The kind of search where things were put almost back where they belonged, but not quite. His desk was slightly askew. The painting on the south wall was 2 centimeters off level. The safe behind it was closed, but the locking mechanism had been wiped down. On the desk sat a phone, not Renner's phone, a cheap prepaid, the kind bought at a gas station. On the screen was a text message, 3 words, 40 minutes, parkade. She should have left. She understood that. She was an accountant. Technically, she was a temp. She took a photo of the message and went downstairs. The parkade beneath the Harbour Crest building had 4 levels and 2 exits. Carlin stood at the base of the stairwell for a moment, measuring the concrete columns and the camera positions. The cameras on B2 were on a 6-hour recorded loop. She'd seen the contract when she audited the security budget. If someone wanted to move through this space without a trace, they'd timed it for the loop's rotation, which would be approximately now. She heard footsteps on the far side of B3, then voices, then the sound of something heavy hitting metal. She moved toward it, keeping to the shadow of the concrete pillars, and found them near the loading bay. Renner, his jacket missing, blood on his collar, held against the side of an unmarked panel van by 2 men she didn't recognize, while a third went through his phone. A 4th stood by the exit with a radio, facing away from her. She looked at the scene the way she looked at a balance sheet, with an error she hadn't yet located. Systematically, she counted the variables. 4 men. She was 5'4" and weighed 138 pounds. She had her laptop bag over one shoulder and her phone in her pocket, and the prepaid she'd lifted from Renner's desk. What she also had, the knowledge that the ventilation shaft running along the south wall of the parkade connected to the building's fire suppression system, that the loading bay's automatic security door ran on a timer that reset every 3 minutes, and that the 4th man by the exit hadn't checked his 6 in the 90 seconds she'd been watching him. She pulled out the prepaid phone. She called the only number in its recent history. It rang twice before someone picked up. "Tell your cleaners the security door on B3 is about to lock them in," she said. "They have 30 seconds. She hung up and hit the emergency fire suppression test button, mounted on the pillar 2 feet from her right hand, the one the maintenance company had installed, and that nobody on the executive floor ever looked at, because it was just a number in a line-item contract, and numbers, in her experience, were exactly what people stopped seeing when they got comfortable. The suppression system discharged in a white chemical fog across the entire B3 level. The loading bay door, registering the suppression event, defaulted to its safety lock cycle, sealing from the outside in. She heard coughing, shouting. She moved low and fast through the fog toward the spot where Renner had been, and found him by sound. His breathing, controlled even through the suppression chemical, the way someone breathes who has had practice staying calm in dark rooms. "This way," she said. He followed. They went up the maintenance stairwell, the route she'd identified in week 1 as the path facilities used to avoid the executive elevators, and came out on the street level near the recycling bay, where the cameras pointed at the loading dock and not at the door. They were 2 blocks east before Renner spoke. "The suppression test button," he said. "Triggered an automatic security lockdown on the loading bay," she said. "They'd have been sealed in for 11 minutes before the system reset. I assume that was enough time." Renner looked at her. "How did you know about the button?" "I audited the maintenance contract in week 1. The test button override was listed as a line item under fire suppression integration. You'd paid for the upgrade, but nobody had updated the evacuation protocol documents. I flagged it in a memo." "I read that memo," he said. "I didn't know what I was reading." "Nobody ever does," she said. "That's why things like this work." She looked at the blood on his collar. "They were waiting for you," she said. "Not randomly. They knew your schedule. They knew which entrance you used. They knew you'd be alone." A pause. "The prepaid on your desk. Someone put it there. Someone with access to your office." Renner's jaw tightened. "Also has a key," he said. His voice was very level. "Orso's parking card logged him in at B2 this afternoon at 4:17, Carlin said. "I saw it in the access report this morning. I noted it because he told you he was in Burnaby all afternoon for the suppliers' meeting." The silence between them had weight. "You knew," Renner said. "I suspected," she said. "I needed tonight to confirm it." He looked down the street, the way people do when they're recalibrating. "The men in the parkade were professional," he said. "Not local. Equipment was military adjacent, the radio discipline, the spacing. The staging accounts I traced 3 weeks ago resolved to a numbered company out of Calgary," Carlin said. "Stahl Capital, clean front. I looked at their filings. They run a private equity acquisition fund. This isn't a rival syndicate trying to muscle in. This is a corporate demolition. Someone is dissolving your operation from the inside out and planning to buy the remains for cents on the dollar." "Stahl," Renner said. He said it the way someone confirms a name they already knew but hadn't wanted to. "You know them." "I know the man who runs the fund," he said. "We were in business together 7 years ago. Briefly," he looked at her. "You dug all of this out of the accounts." "The accounts, the access logs, the maintenance contracts, the parking records," she said. "Everything is in the books. People just stop looking." They didn't go back to the Harbour Crest building. Renner had a secondary location. Not a safe house in the dramatic sense, just a warehouse office in the East Port district he kept for overflow operations, stacked with shipping manifests and folding chairs, and a coffee machine that cost less than the ones on the 39th floor, but made better coffee. Orso didn't know about it. That was the point. Carlin sat across from Renner at a folding table and laid everything out, not dramatically, methodically, the way she always worked. The paper trail she'd built over 3 weeks, the access patterns, the offshore staging accounts, the connection to Stahl Capital, the timeline. It wasn't a story. It was a spreadsheet, organized into something a person could follow. Renner didn't interrupt. He read everything she put in front of him and asked 2 precise questions and accepted the answers without pushing. When she was done, he leaned back in his chair and looked at the ceiling. "You've been building this since week 1, he said. "Since day 1, she said. "You hired me to find the leak. I found it. The leak is Orso, and it's been running for 14 months, and the money Stahl is holding is enough to trigger a forced receivership if he files the right motion at the right moment. He's been waiting for you to be sufficiently isolated before he moves." "And tonight was the isolation attempt," Renner said. "Tonight was the hard version," she said. "I think they expected the financial route to be enough. When you didn't fracture the way the model said you should, they escalated. Because of your memos, the accounts I reassigned the audit firm. You responded to the information," she said. "That wasn't predictable in Stahl's model. His model assumed your financial department would stay compromised." Renner looked at her with that flat, calculating steadiness she'd come to recognize. "What do you need to shut this down?" he said. Carlin had already thought about this. "Access to the full server archive," she said. "Not the edited version on the main system, the raw backup. Every transaction for the past 3 years. I can build a complete picture of the fund flow and reverse engineer Stahl's acquisition timeline. If I can identify the exact moment the money moves out of the staging accounts, I can give you a window of between 8 and 72 hours to counterfile. Freeze his assets before he freezes yours." "That's a legal move," Renner said. "Some of it," she said. "The rest is documentation that goes to the wrong people at the right moment." He didn't ask her to define the wrong people. She appreciated that. "There's a drive," he said. "Encrypted backup. Briggs kept a copy off-site. I know the location but not the decryption key. He had it separately, which is why I couldn't access it when this started." He described the encryption format. She thought for a moment. "Briggs used his kids' birthdays for everything," she said. "I found 3 instances in the system passwords that all referenced the same date pattern. It's a common mistake." She looked up. "Give me the drive." "You can break his encryption in a night?" Renner said. "I can break most people's encryption in an afternoon," she said. "People aren't as creative as they think they are when they're afraid." She broke it in 6 hours. By the time pale grey light was coming through the warehouse's high windows, Carlin had rebuilt the entire architecture of what Stahl Capital had been doing for 3 years. Not just to the Renner Group, but to 2 other port sector operations before it. Same pattern executed cleanly, same staged accounts, same insider recruitment, same endgame acquisition. The previous 2 had gone through. Both companies now existed as subsidiaries of a Stahl-owned logistic conglomerate. She printed everything. Renner read it, standing up, which she'd noticed was how he read things that mattered. "He'll move this week," she said. "The staging accounts are at threshold. If he doesn't move in the next 4 days, the interest carry starts working against him. He needs to file by Thursday." "What do I do with this?" Renner said. "2 things, simultaneously," she said. "First, this package goes to the CBSA Financial Crimes Unit and to 3 specific journalists who cover Port Authority contracts. Not to tip them off, just to create a paper trail that makes it very messy for anyone to make this information disappear. Second, someone walks into Stahl's offices with the account documentation and offers him a choice." "What choice?" "Liquidate the staging accounts back into the Renner Group's operational fund voluntarily and walk away from the terminal contract," she said. "Or explain to a federal investigator why a private equity fund made 17 deposits into an account controlled by a foreign shell company in a pattern that matches the definition of constructive fraud under Section 380 of the Criminal Code." Renner looked at her for a long moment. "You know the Criminal Code," he said. "I know the sections that apply to money," she said. "That's most of them." "And also," she looked at him. "That's not a numbers question," she said. "That one is yours." He nodded. He understood the boundary. "Who walks into Stahl's office?" he said. "You do," she said. "With this," she tapped the printed report, "he'll know what it means. Men like Stahl always understand a ledger." She waited in the car. Renner was inside for 41 minutes. She kept time on her phone and watched the street, the way she'd taught herself to watch things. Systematically, assigning probability to each variable, updating the model as conditions changed. He came out alone. He got into the passenger seat. She'd moved to the driver's side without being asked, because she'd looked at the underground parking entrance across the street and made a calculation she didn't like. "Well," she said. "He chose the first option," Renner said. His voice was level. Something underneath it was not. "The transfer will take 48 hours to clear," she said. "I'll watch the accounts." "I know you will," he said. She pulled out of the parking spot and drove precisely, without wasted movement, checking her mirrors at intervals that were specific rather than habitual. They drove for several blocks without speaking. The city was getting its morning started around them, delivery trucks, dog walkers, the first commuters coming down out of the condos toward the SkyTrain stations. The ordinary world, entirely unbothered. "Where are you going?" Renner said, eventually. "I thought I'd drop you somewhere," she said, "then go home and sleep, since I've been awake for 31 hours. "You can sleep at the warehouse," he said. "I need you near the accounts until the transfer clears." She considered this. "The couch in the back office," she said. "I'll have something brought in." "Something that isn't the couch," she said. "The couch has a spring issue in the left cushion." He looked at her. "You noticed that in passing?" he said. "I notice most things," she said. "I just don't say them until they're useful." A quiet settled over the car, not uncomfortable, not the kind that needed to be filled. After a while, Renner said, "You came down to the parkade." "Yes," she said. "You didn't have to." "No," she said. "Why did you?" She thought about it. She drove another block. "I'd found everything I needed to find," she said. "But a report doesn't do anything if the person it's written for isn't around to read it." It was a practical answer. It was also true. She was comfortable with things that were both. Renner said nothing. She drove. At a red light on Cordova, she glanced sideways. He was looking out the window at the early morning water, grey and flat and entirely unbothered by everything that had happened in the past 9 hours. She understood that, too. "The accounts," she said when the light changed. "When this clears, I'll give you the full audit, every thread." "I know," he said. "And then I'll write you a proper balance sheet," she said. "The actual one, for everything." He turned to look at her. "I didn't ask for that," he said. "No," she said, "but you'll need it." She didn't tell him she'd already started it. She'd been working backward through 3 years of the Renner Group's real finances alongside everything else, quietly building a picture of what his operation actually looked like when someone was paying honest attention. The shape of it was different from what the official ledgers suggested. More complicated, more human. She'd tell him when it was finished. That was how she worked. Quietly, without announcing the thing until the thing was done. The numbers would say what needed saying. They always did.